Welcome back to the latest episode of the CGA Tour podcast. As always, here I'm your host, Calvin Glen Alexander. And on tonight's podcast, I'm rejoined by the one, the only, the NFL guru, NFL draft guru especially, but NFL guru himself, Patrick McDermott. Pat, how's it going?
It's going great, man. Yesterday was such a good day for football. Oh my gosh, everything that I love about NFL football was yesterday. We had the highest highs, we had the lowest lows, huge personalities, we had great coaches involved. This is why we love the sport. I haven't seen any ratings or anything, but I would be shocked if these weren't like all-time rated games. Everybody loved a lot about the teams involved. Just couldn't have been a better NFL Sunday to close out before the Super Bowl.
Yeah, tons of great storylines and tons of great storylines heading into the Super Bowl now too with each team that did win. So we'll get into that a little bit more here. But, started off with the biggest thing coming into the season, as you may know, I'm a Chargers fan. And I was thinking, all right, you know what? Justin Herbert, Brandon Staley, if this is going to be a year they do something, this is going to be the year. Maybe the Chiefs take a little bit of a dip. They don't have Tyreek Hill. They don't have all these wide receivers that are helping them out, anymore. Who's going to step up from this Chiefs kind of wide receiver pool to help them out, right? Chargers draft another wide receiver. This is the Chargers division now. And we had been hearing that for some years. If Herbert's incredible, if Mahomes is slipping a little bit, et cetera, et cetera. And now all of a sudden the Chiefs are headed back to the Super Bowl again. So my question for you really is, how have they changed on the fly? How has their play style changed? How do they keep doing this?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, and it starts and ends with Patrick Mahomes, obviously, but I mean, he just doesn't let up. There is not a single football player that we've seen in decades, maybe ever, who shows up in big games like Patrick Mahomes. There's simply no one else who does it like him, even if he has a quote unquote off year. Like you said, today's the year with fewer weapons, all of this. How does he still do it? Because nobody plays harder than him in big games. And he's athletic. He's creative. In a way, their play style hasn't changed on offense. He has just elevated the weapons, right? Like all of a sudden Rice is a number one receiver. No one knew who this guy was before or weren't familiar with him. Obviously, Kelsey gets all the accolades and rightfully so. He had an all-time game yesterday. But I think where the biggest way that their play styles changed is on defense. They got really young and really talented on defense. Like that, Steve Spagnuolo and Andy Reid are just such a duo. In a way, they're sort of the old guard, for these new like McVays and Shanahans, revolutionizing the game. In a way, Andy Reid and Spagnuolo are going, no, we still play the best offense and defense in the game. Like we've been around forever. We know what we're doing. So they've just drafted incredibly well. And the emphasis has moved to the defense. And that's won them big games. It won them that playoff game. You mentioned the Dolphins, whose offense has been out of control, for all year. And, they held them, they came through. It was their defense that dominated in that game. So, defense has just kind of risen to the top with this franchise, and they're getting some well-deserved recognition.
Yeah, their defense has been incredible, but more my question here too is like on Kelsey. Is Kelsey do you think he just kind of turns it on for the playoffs now? I mean, the biggest factor that I learned this season, or biggest fact I learned this year is that Gronk and Kelsey are the same age. Now, granted, there's several other factors to go into it and health injuries and granted, you listen to podcasts about Gronk and every single person who says he was out partying until literally he would fall asleep in the training room until the game, or the practice, the day of, and they'd hook him up to some IV and then he'd be good to go at 7 a.m., right? But he'd fall asleep in there at 2 a.m. So, granted, different regimens here, but
doesn't it feel like Kelsey could be a similar guy? Like, Kelsey parties too. Like tight ends go. Like, I think what's his face? Greg. I'm blanking on his last name. Greg Olsen. Olsen. Yeah. He seems a little more buttoned up than most tight ends, but you've got Kittle, you've got Gronk, you've got Kelsey, they all go pretty hard. So I think they out muscle people, and I think Kelsey's still maybe the biggest mismatch in the game. Like you mentioned the Chargers, you and I went to a lot of Chargers games together. I never feel like I saw an NFL player that absolutely was an unstoppable threat the way Travis Kelce was. He knew how to get open. He has a quarterback that'll get him the ball, and like he's still their absolute number one threat at any given time.
It's wild. It's honestly wild to me because they don't need anyone but Kelce. I mean, they needed to get rid of Tyreek probably to basically re-sign Mahomes for the major deal he's on, but it's just bizarre to me how they're able to retool. But then again, that's what makes good coaches great. Able to have this basically interchangeable offensive philosophy. And the Chiefs lose their offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy, who Reid gave a ton of credit to this season, and heck, they're still back in the Super Bowl the next year. And for whatever anyone wants to say in the media and the Dan Orlovskis and whatever of, well, it might have been still Reid or it might have been Bieniemy, it's got to only help to have another guy who's super knowledgeable. It can't hurt to have Bieniemy. But anyways, that's a story for another day.
Hard call there. Like one of the weird coaching, like lateral moves or downward moves we've seen, like Bieniemy going to Washington to be the OC, like really just a weird thing. And it was just, I think it was just time to move on. Like, I think it came down to maybe a professional thing. Like you've been at the same place too long. Like Andy Reid's not leaving. Like maybe if they originally, maybe at one point it was the plan for Bieniemy to be sort of that heir apparent, but it's not happening. And he eventually just had to go somewhere else. And like, fair enough, but boy, is that a bad kind of football move. Bieniemy doesn't probably love his life right now compared to where the Chiefs are at, but we'll see. Time will tell.
He's looking at that second overall draft pick going, please, one of these guys save me, because Sam Howell was just Sam Howell was not drafted to be it anyways. So that's what he's looking at. And they got new ownership in Washington, all that type of stuff too. So
huge transition. Absolutely.
Huge transition there for sure. The other thing when it comes to coaching though, is on the other side of the football here, when it comes to the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan eventually gets over the hump of, I want to say, the past several years having subpar quarterback play and it just not being good enough. Last year, of course, you have Mr. Brock Purdy himself, Mr. Irrelevant, come in and then get injured in the NFC Championship game, and then the Eagles go, which has got to be just a heartbreaking thing for any Niners fan. But, of course, they make it this year. What do you think Kyle Shanahan's legacy is if he's able to actually get that Super Bowl win? With this team, right? Because as far as I know, Kyle Shanahan still is looking to put basically his big, huge stamp on this is how good I am, right? He's gotten so far with so many guys, but the last time he was in this position, he had Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick.
It would do tremendous things for his legacy. I personally think he's already a top 5 coach in the NFL. Like that's not really up for debate in my mind. I think if he wins a Super Bowl again, finally, you're right. Finally, like he made a Super Bowl and now he has a chance to win it. He's a top 3 coach in the league, probably for me. Like, I think this game is all about the 49ers and their legacy. Like if Pat Mahomes wins another one, more power to him. Like he's moving up those ranks toward, an all-time great career potentially. But the 49ers, man, I think Kyle Shanahan cements himself. Like, I think he's a McVay now. He's better than McVay. If they're equal in Super Bowls, he's had a better career than McVay now. And not that it makes sense, or not that that's like the end all be all, but like if that's his counterpart, if that's his young offensive guru, counterpart that people associate him with, I think he exceeds him now. Because the past few years, the 49ers, it's felt like they're this machine, gearing up for the playoffs. And it's like 2 years ago, they were a wild card team. Like I think they were 3rd in the division, and they geared up at playoff time. It was like a 10-7 team or something. And they figured out, we're good. Like we got a chance here. And like in the playoffs, go. And they make the championship game, and then they run into the Rams. They run into Matt Stafford on a new team, everything. And like, they just weren't getting past the Rams. And then last year it was the same thing, like an even better team. And it was go. And then they run into the Eagles again, like a team, like spiking up at the right time, like new coach, new quarterback, whatever. And this year they punched through that brick wall. Like they did the same thing. Like after those 3 losses in the middle of the year, the 49ers have not looked back. Like, we'll get to our game picks later. I won't spoil where I'm going with this, but They are a great team. I mean, Kyle Shanahan, he's done it. He and John Lynch, like they've built a machine here. They have built an NFL operation machine. This time they're in the driver's seat.
It's one of the more bizarre things that I'm unsure how they're able to do it with the cap space deal overall. I mean, they have a guy that is a household name at every position, it seems like, on the offense and defensive side. Oh, yeah, they've got Fred Warner. Oh, you want
to talk about one position in particular?
Sure, yeah.
One of a position that affects the salary cap for the 49ers.
Well, I mean, Brock Purdy.
The most.
Is that what
I'm talking about? Yes, the most important position in sports.
Well, okay, so I was gonna get to that at some point here, because the other thing is that, of course, they have so many guys defensively that I forget about a dude every so often, and it's like, oh yeah, they have Chase Young. What the heck? I mean, there's just guys I forget are on their team. That's like, oh yeah, they traded for him mid-season, and I'm sure he's been super impactful, but I don't even realize he's there because they have Nick Bosa on the other side. It's just bizarre. With that being said, they are able to afford it because they have literally Mr. Irrelevant, Mr. Brock Purdy himself, Mr. throws interception to Malcolm Rodriguez for the second time in his career, just different jerseys they're wearing at this point because he did it when he was at Iowa State to OSU. Malcolm Rodriguez as well. Hey, if you were on X last night, or formerly Twitter, that was all Oklahoma State feed here in my For You page, of course. But with that being said, Brock Purdy, is he... I don't want to be mean or anything, and I don't think I necessarily am, because Super Bowl quarterback, to be a Super Bowl quarterback, you've got to be incredible. I mean, you just have to be like an upper echelon guy, no matter what. But is he the worst Super Bowl starting quarterback since Rex Grossman? Or are we even going back farther? He's the worst starting Super Bowl quarterback for how many years back? Because, I mean, there are years we can go back. Or is Purdy that good?
Calvin.
You've seen him play so much.
This is a ridiculous question.
Okay.
You are insane. Brock Purdy is not even close to the worst starting quarterback, like on any notable Super Bowl list. Joe, he's a better quarterback than Joe Flacco. He's a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. These aren't. I mean, is he? These aren't really difficult. Brock Purdy is so good. Like, forget the draft pick. He has already so far exceeded any expectations for being Mr. Irrelevant, that the fact that he has, I don't have his record right in front of me, but I think it's like 21-5 or something. Like, the guy's insane. Did you see how well he played yesterday? He made third down clutch play after third down clutch play. Brock Purdy is the real deal. I didn't like it. It was fellow Big 12, school guy here. I didn't love him in college. I didn't like him. He was there 4 years, 4-year starter. He was the opposite, the equal and opposite of Sam Ehlinger. Like during the time I was, I was running UT, because he was a 4-year starter, had all the experience in the world, wasn't like the biggest, most athletic or best armed guy. He just was ultra competitive. And like when he lost, it was never for lack of effort. Like the dude is just like an absolute staple of Iowa State football. And he defined their team for like 4 years. And I was kind of like sick of seeing the guy. And now I can't get enough of him. I think he's the best story in the Super Bowl. I'm such a Brock Purdy guy.
But best story, sure. He's storybook ways Mr. Irrelevant to Super Bowl starter in 2 years is an incredible story.
Super Bowl, yeah.
But what I'm getting at here is, do you really just, the 49ers are so loaded. I don't think I'm bad in saying that. They have Chris McCaffrey. They have one of the best offensive lines in football, if not the best offensive line in football. They have wide receivers all over the field. They basically have a hybrid wide receiver 1/running back 1 in Deebo Samuel, depending on how they use him. They have George Kittle. I mean, I can just keep going, right? So when I'm saying worst starting Super Bowl quarterback, yes, that's a great tagline. Hopefully YouTube algorithm picks this thing up and it goes wild. But what I'm getting at is that if Joe Flacco today, this Joe Flacco that we saw, is standing at quarterback, are the Niners still getting to the Super Bowl? If Jimmy Garoppolo, a fully healthy Jimmy Garoppolo, granted that's a big question mark, but like one healthy enough to start in the Super Bowl, is he? I mean, I mean, how far are we going back here? Because you're either an
here's the
MVP or you're not an MVP. And I mean, I would, of the last 10 years going back, I mean, I got pulled up. I'm taking any of these guys right now. I mean, Matt Ryan over. Am I just absolutely just going out here on a limb? What the facial expressions are giving me are just not necessarily great. Brock Purdy's a great quarterback.
I mean, yeah, Brock Purdy on the 49ers with Kyle Shanahan. Like, here's the difference for me. So these other Super Bowl quarterbacks, like Jared Goff 5 years ago, or whatever it was, played great this year, but like that type of quarterback, or Jimmy G, the last time these teams met, like that might be the best example where it's like those quarterbacks can spike up and have an exceptional year and make the Super Bowl. What I'm saying is this Super Bowl may not be an outlier for Brock Purdy. Like, I think Brock Purdy can go to more Super Bowls with Kyle Shanahan calling his plays. Like, I'm saying we need to get used to Brock Purdy as like a set records quarterback as far as like winning, and like he's going to be back. Like, I have no idea if he's going to win this one.
Yeah.
But Brock Purdy is a legitimate quarterback. Like, it's not hard to see. And like the fact that he's up against Pat Mahomes is too bad, because like he's outshined in this big game. But like some of the plays he was making against the Lions while trailing, for most of that game, insane. Brock Purdy like made Patrick Mahomes plays and arguably was more kind of pinpoint and poised with the football on the same Sunday. I'm all in on Brock Purdy is what I'm saying.
I got that you're all in. I just, if I'm looking back through quarterbacks of the that have played in the Super Bowl, I'm going back a little bit of ways here before I'm like, oh yeah, this guy's worse than Purdy. That's what I'm getting at.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. I mean, Jared Goff with Sean McVay or Jared Goff with Kyle Shanahan. Same guy.
Yeah.
Same guy. You know what I mean?
Or
like
Jared Goff with Ben Johnson. Yeah.
That's kind of my thing here. Is that like,
you're saying hypothetically. Yeah.
I'm saying like, okay, if you switch out Brock Purdy for Rex Grossman, okay, I think they're worse. I think they're for sure worse. Right. But like, that's the first name where I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I'm taking for sure. I mean, Jake Delhomme in 03. Yeah. You know what?
Yeah,
probably taking Purdy.
We're really going
right?
back now. Yeah.
But you know what? But I mean, like, that's how far you got to go back, because the other quarterbacks, like, okay, the previous time the Niners were in the Super Bowl with the other Harbaugh brother playing. Yeah. I mean, yeah, Joe Flacco calling Kaepernick Super Bowl. Okay, maybe I'm taking Purdy, but like that's now 12 years ago. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Okay,
here.
but what about
it's been a while.
What about somebody like Nick Foles? What about Nick Foles? Like, Nick Foles is, for all intents and purposes, out of the league. Could easily never see the field again.
Super Bowl MVP.
I mean, what about
Nick
that?
Foles. Yeah, Super Bowl MVP.
Nick Foles, like, quickly nosedived, nosedove. I don't know. I'm just saying, Brock Purdy is going to have staying power in the National Football League.
Well, so this is my follow-up question.
And a lot of it is attributed.
Yeah.
A lot of it can be attributed to Shanahan, absolutely. But that doesn't take away from what he's doing.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not saying like Kyle Shanahan could get you and I in the same spot. Like, there's no way. But I'm also saying. But I'm also saying, like, if Dak Prescott was instead in there, or Justin Herbert, would this team have not lost a game? Like, I mean, there's these things. After seeing that Packers-Niners game in full, right? Like, the Packers game, I mean, Brock Purdy, his hand size all of a sudden was in question. Every podcast was talking about how, man, if it's rainy, holy cow. And then everything was talking about, well, the forecast for the weather in the game of the Niners, versus the Lions looks like it'll be clear, and the Super Bowl's in a dome, so Purdy's good. He's in the clear, right? But like,
no worries. Yeah.
But like, if I was the Lions, I'd be going, you've got to be kidding me. How can we not get some more moisture on this football? Just every player spit on it, because it just looked like it was so bizarre. Because you saw like Purdy played worse than he did even in college in some spots in the rain. I mean, in that game, I mean, he was just he was just missing stuff. He was not like the reads wise. He was trying to fit stuff in tight windows that just wasn't there with a wet ball. Like that to me was just uncharacteristic of him. as opposed to this guy who has gone on this incredible tear and has a historic record as a starting quarterback. Like, that was the one outlier game where I'm going, okay, that this is a little bit why you get drafted 7th round. Because previously, before then, it was like, how in the world did he slip this far? And as, listen, I can be a huge Oklahoma State fan, huge homer as I want to, but like, Mahomes won 0 games against Oklahoma State, and yet he's gone to how many Super Bowls now? So that doesn't, like, college stuff clearly doesn't matter as much. But like, Purdy played a while in college and had good years. So to fall all the way to the 7th round, the last pick, it's like, what's going on here? But then he's just almost in the perfect spot here. And I say almost because, like, if Purdy was like 3 inches taller, would he be like, have drafted in the 3rd round or something, just popped off the charts a little bit? It's a fun topic.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the fact that he was Mr. Irrelevant basically means he was a 50-50, like, draft or don't draft guy, like a drafted guy or not drafted guy. And he changed the game in that way too, because we've seen in the 2 drafts after him, GMs taking a shot on a 7th round quarterback, getting a guy and just seeing if he works out. Because then if he has to play, like Brock Purdy ended up having to play for the first time, suddenly he wows you, and it's like, oh, we may have something special, and it's worth, taking a swing on a guy at the quarterback position. So he's kind of changed the way the late rounds go. You have a lot of people kind of rolling the dice and going, okay, well, I hope he's another Brock Purdy, so. And it's even more impressive because, and obviously I'm going to relate everything back to the draft, but it's also amazing because the 49ers made a maybe historic, like, draft goof, however you want to say it, with the Trey Lance trade, like trading up to get Trey Lance in the top 4 or whatever it was. Yeah. For that, like, that can easily set your franchise back 3 years. By trading up, giving up capital to move up to get a quarterback who never pans out. Like, that is really tough to come back from. And they did not skip a beat, again, because of Brock Purdy
and Kyle Shanahan and
Kyle Shanahan.
And anyways,
more than anybody.
Yep. With that being said, here
McCaffrey.
too, well, and Deebo Samuel and we keep
and
going,
George Kittle.
Yeah. And Brandon Ayuk. The other side of the coin here, though.
Nick Bosa.
Oh, and Chase Young. The other side of the coin here.
And Fred Warner.
Okay, yeah, I'm almost out here. And Trent Williams. And the other side of the coin here, though, is that if Purdy wins the Super Bowl, right? And this is totally in their own possibility. Anything can happen. But, like, I think the Niners are good enough to play with the Chiefs. It doesn't have to be just Purdy winning. But gets Super Bowl wins. Is he a max contract quarterback at that point? He's got Super Bowl under his belt in year 2. And then great, I know his contract's not up tomorrow, but, like, are all of a sudden on the other side of this, are we going, okay, well, now Purdy's like top 5 quarterback in the league. He demands top money, yada, yada, all this type of stuff. Or is it more of, okay, well, here's where we come down to earth a little bit more on what his valuation is and how good he is compared to the rest of the league when it comes to his contract details? Like, where's side are you on here? How does he get evaluated there?
It's a good question. And I think we could, like, he is such an anomaly of a draft pick to now Super Bowl quarterback that he could also be an anomaly contract wise. Like, he seems like the type of dude who would accept, like, a pretty irregular contract, like not a max deal, like a Burrow or a Herbert, quote unquote max deal. The sky's the limit in the NFL, but, a market share, a market deal basically for a giant star quarterback. We could see a mix between that and we could see a medium length deal for a medium amount of money to try to keep some pieces, because I think if they don't do that, they're going to have to see how he functions without weapons. Like, he's the perfect quarterback to throw to Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle all year, and then make incredible big plays at the right moment in the playoff games to get them to the Super Bowl. Like, that's a perfect quarterback for your team. But, they're not going to be able to keep, McCaffrey, Samuel, and Kittle probably, for past next year. So yeah, but think of it this way: we're sitting here debating if he could get a super deal, like a max, whatever equivalent of a max deal. We're debating if he could get that, but at the same time, we were debating for multiple years if Lamar Jackson should get that. You know what I mean? like, should the Ravens pay Lamar Jackson? Okay, well, they've waited this long. They're obviously going to pay him. And then they're not paying him. Like, they're waiting to the last minute. Like, what's happening? Like, it was down to the wire with Lamar Jackson, who's now just is going to win another MVP and like went to the championship game. Obviously didn't win the Super Bowl, kind of laid an egg. We don't have to dwell on it. But do you see what I'm saying? Like,
oh yeah,
if we're like, obvious, like all of a sudden, in hindsight, Lamar Jackson, you're going, that's the most obvious thing ever. Obviously, you pay Lamar Jackson, keep him on your team forever, pay whatever it takes. And the fact that Brock Purdy is in that same conversation is like pretty crazy. Like, that's good for him. So, yeah, I think he could get it. Like, if they lose Christian McCaffrey next year and he doesn't, and they just replace him with another running back that Brock can throw to, and he keeps doing the same thing, that'll shut up a lot of people and he can save a lot of money that way. McCaffrey was the Super Bowl move, like they had everything they needed. The offense works without him. He's the Super Bowl move.
He's offensive.
And they did it. They made the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
He's so good. And like, yeah, Brock gets him the ball, but then after the catch, like, what are you going to do? Like,
yeah, I mean,
he's the best. He's the best in the world.
Yeah. It's one of those things when I've been doing some draft analysis myself here, trying to tee up here for April and watching a little Bo Nix tape. I'm like, Bo Nix, is he the next Brock Purdy? Because he throws the ball 27% of the time behind the line of scrimmage. So like in college, and this last year at Oregon, 27% of the time. So there's a little like, all right, you know what? Peyton Manning, elite like reader of a defense. Did not necessarily have to have the best quarterback coach, best head coach in the entire world to win everything. At some points, though, he did. But he didn't have to. Whereas almost Brock Purdy, like, he doesn't have to. I don't want to diminish it to that. But yeah, I mean, Kyle Shanahan, he just has to get a quarterback just good enough to get there. And heck, we could be talking about Brock Purdy going back-to-back Super Bowls if he was just healthy last year. Who knows how that game goes down against the Eagles last year?
Very true. Very true.
Big what ifs. Big what ifs here. With another what if though, if the Chiefs win, what does that do for Mahomes' legacy here on his way to being the Brady comparisons? I don't think anyone's ever going to win 7 Super Bowls, but all of a sudden we're talking about Mahomes winning his 3rd when he's on his still first big contract. So, and granted, Mahomes is not 30 and Brady played to 45. So anything's possible, especially with the quarterback rules the way they are, and maybe Mahomes getting better every single year. But like, what does Mahomes' legacy look like? What all of a sudden are you saying in your head, hey, Mahomes is this kind of guy if he's able to win this one?
Yeah. So if he wins 2 weeks from now, that will be his 3rd Super Bowl. I'm sure he's the youngest to ever win 3 Super Bowls. Well, actually, I'm not sure. I mean, Brady's obviously going to be his comp in all of this. So maybe he and Brady are the same age. I'm not sure. But he's 3 Super Bowls would put him in territory with Troy Aikman. Like, that's a great list to be on. And he'd be 1 short of the 4 Super Bowl club, which is Bradshaw and Montana. So like, and these guys like Bradshaw, most people wouldn't talk about as like an all-time great quarterback, but as an all-time playoff quarterback, or an all-time like Super Bowl performer, now he's solidly in tier 2 behind Brady, just in Super Bowl performance. And he could climb, being younger than all those people. But like, he's with Aikman, he's with Bradshaw, he's with Montana. Being with Montana is a huge deal. Like, he's one trophy behind Montana, but he's really, really young, and he's got a system in place. You know what I mean? Like, nobody thinks Pat Mahomes is anywhere close to being done winning Super Bowls, no matter what happens against the 49ers.
Yeah, there's some wild stuff on the whole Brady Mahomes just kind of comparison here at at this age, because first team All-Pro, Mahomes has 2 already. He probably is going up for maybe a third one this year, but I think actually Lamar probably gets it for the All-Pro this year.
Lamar's probably
win MVP. But Brady has 3 All-Pros all time. First team All-Pros. Now that's not the greatest stat in the entire world, but like we're talking about just Pro Bowls, Mahomes 5 straight years. And Brady 15. Yeah. He had a gap for basically a couple years, but that's it. I mean, it's just the wild stuff that Mahomes can be able to catch up to Brady super quickly here on just amount of, regular season games and playoff games. Just Brady's stuff is just astronomical because he played to his 45, but you're looking at it like, man, just there's so many stats for Mahomes already. We're talking about playoff touchdowns. Mahomes is halfway there right now. And he's 5-6 years in. So like this is just kind of a wild deal overall. Shout out to Mahomes, I guess. But without getting too much into the Brady Mahomes debate here, if the Niners win, kind of going the Brock Purdy stuff, where do you rank him if the Niners win? And like, is he top 5, top 10, top 15 quarterbacks in the league? Clearly, if he wins Super Bowl, then the Niners are not going to looking to get rid of him or replace him anytime soon. So where does he rank on that top? Whatever.
He's not. He can't be on your list for top 5 quarterback. Like there's no way to defend that against the top 5 guys in the league. Like I can feel all I want to feel about how Kyle Shanahan, like how Kyle Shanahan is going to turn Brock Purdy into the quarterback with the best winning percentage, best like efficiency stats, all of this, like all of that can be true, but he's not a top 5 talent. Like, he's in that conversation because of Shanahan, but he's not a Mahomes. He's not a Josh Allen. He's not a Joe Burrow. He's not a Lamar Jackson. Put whoever else you want in there. He's not a Jalen Hurts. He's not a Dak. He might be a Dak. Dak, he plays so much better in big games than Dak does. I would hear that conversation, but yeah, I think he would be in the top 10.
Well, I guess
definitely Herbert, top 15.
You're taking, if someone goes, hey, you got to take one guy for one game, right? You're taking Herbert or Purdy. And I think right now it's like, oh man, Herbert just has had such a bad historical deal, but yeah, I think you take Purdy. That's a weird thing to say.
Herbert. Herbert actively does not win big games.
Yeah, the Dallas
he
game
beat the Chiefs
this year.
He did beat the Chiefs one of those years on the road, so that was good.
Which is great. But then I also see him play against Dallas this year, where the literally last Chargers offensive play of the game, he throws an interception. It's just one of those things where it's like, all right, does Purdy do the same thing? Probably not. He probably makes a smart decision. Probably takes the sack, or whatever, right?
And he's so good with the football. Yeah. And he scrambled so well yesterday. Like, who saw that coming? Like he scrambled for multiple third downs. Like it was great. He was great to watch.
All right. Well, now we can kind of get into the nitty gritty of the game here. So I want to ask you here, Super Bowl MVP pick. But first, got to ask you who you're going to pick to win the game, because I think that's going to indicate who you'd have as MVP.
Possibly. Yeah. So quick side note on my pick for the game. If I was a betting man, I'm retired from gambling. But my bet would be on the over. I love the over in this game. It's 48.5, 48 maybe, which I think is too low. I think like there are such good defensive players in this game. And I think defensive plays will make a giant difference here. Like there's 1 or 2 big turnovers, like, sack in a big spot. Like defenders are going to have their moment, but I also think there's going to be points scored. Like I think the offenses are going to come to play. Like both offenses are going to be let loose, and I think there's going to be points. So give me over. It's in a dome, no elements, like what have you. So some guys getting healthier. I love the over. Okay, that being said, I've talked a lot about how much I love Brock Purdy. Love Brock Purdy. Love the 49ers here. Like you said, we got all pros at every position, arguably Hall of Famers at a lot of positions. But I am picking the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes to win Super Bowl MVP, because I'm tired of him proving me wrong, which is embarrassing. I didn't think he was going to make the Super Bowl last year. He did. I didn't think he was going to make the Super Bowl this year. Not only did he, but he also beat the team I really thought was going to be there, the Ravens. I really thought they were going to win that game at home, and they were going to be the story, like all of that. But he proved me wrong. I'm really tired of being wrong in my predictions on this show. So I'm taking Pat Mahomes because he's going to win the Super Bowl. He's going to win the Super Bowl. The 49ers, I really like them a lot. I really like them. I really wish they would win the Super Bowl, but Pat Mahomes is going to win. Like he doesn't lose. It's impossible for him to lose practically. And I don't think he's going to lose in 2 weeks. What say you?
The way Mahomes lost the only Super Bowl he's lost so far, granted he's appeared in 3 and he's lost 1. That was solely in my mind because of how defensive pressure affected him, of how he had so little time in the pocket, his offensive line just not being there. And this year, that's really been kind of the opposite, I want to say, of Mahomes this year. His wide receivers have failed him in big games. He hasn't had it where the offensive lines failed him in those same big games. Now, yes, could certain things have gone his way? Could there have been an MVS, pass interference call? Could there have been several other things here that happened? Sure. But I think the Chiefs have been so incredibly smart in retooling this offensive line around Mahomes. I mean, we saw it this year, really with the Eagles. The reason why the Eagles didn't come back in my mind is because they've got all these guys who just got old real quick. Like basically 11 games in, all of a sudden they just wore out. I mean, their Eagles were 10-1, and then all of a sudden they were 5-6 down the stretch, and they lose to the Buccaneers where it's like they didn't show up to play. And then you have this Chiefs team where their offensive line is good. It's pretty darn good. And the way that you lose the Super Bowl if you're the Chiefs is that you basically have the 49ers get to the quarterback a bunch, and I don't see that happening with Mahomes. I see him scrambling around, finding guys, figuring out ways guys are open. But the Niners yesterday looked like they were beatable for a whole entire half of football, and then in a quarter they flipped it. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, you have a Lions player on the sidelines waving at Niners fans heading into halftime because they're like, oh, we're up big. We're up 21-7. All of a sudden, blink of an eye, it's gone. So I don't want to say, oh, you know what? There's no way the Niners win, because I think there is definitely several different routes the Niners win.
Oh, on paper, they should win.
Yeah.
On paper, the Niners should win.
I mean, if you, we're going to talk about elements here in a second. If you take all the elements, which side wins out? All right, offense, defense, quarterbacks, who would you take, right? Just if you're just draft picking like areas of the team. I'm not going to get into players because I don't know the lines that well. I don't know the special teams that well, right? But if you're just taking which defense would I take? Niners. Which set of wide receivers? Niners. Which running backs? I can just keep going, right? Like tight ends, Chiefs. Quarterback, Chiefs. But besides that, and tight ends really, really close too, because George Kittle's George Kittle. But like, there's so many things.
I wasn't sure about receivers either.
Receivers. I mean, receivers, I'm taking.
No, you're right, though. You're right, though. I was just thinking like general passing weapons. Like, the 49ers have everything.
So I'm taking the Niners. But then to come back to what you just said, I'm tired of being wrong about Mahomes. Like, at some point, Mahomes will lose, and I'll feel like, man, okay. But for years, I was like, Brady can't win this one. Oh, Brady can't win this one. And now I kind of in the same thing where I'm like, until I see Mahomes lose weirdly, not like, his team let him down, until I see him have a Brock Purdy wet ball game or something that just looks off, I'm going to take Mahomes. I'm just, that's what I'm taking too. I actually think this will be a low score game. I hate it
for the record.
For the record, not a fan.
Oh, you don't like the over?
I don't like the over. And the reason being here is that I think this is a sad, because I don't want to see injuries, but I think this is these teams are physical and they are going to fight each other, just punch each other up and down the field. And there will just not be a lot of big plays. Like, I just don't see that happening where the offenses are so good and so wide open. I just think these defenses are going to be what's really the tail of the tape here. I mean, could I see a 13-3 game? No. I mean, it's not going to be a Super Bowl with Jared Goff in it, but
no way.
but I could easily see like a 20-13 game. I could definitely see a way where, okay, you know what? Deebo Samuel, gets dinged up, comes back later. None of the special team stuff ends up getting anyone any good field position. Their punters are incredible, and it just playing out like that, where it's Mahomes was truly just had to be an incredible game manager, which he's shown he can clearly do. And that's the way that the Chiefs end up winning. And Andy Reid just has cement himself in Canton for forever already, but it's even making a stronger case in point here of the top being one of the top coaches all time and possibly rivaling Belichick at some point too, especially in the way that Belichick's career maybe ended, but definitely his, at least his deal in New England. So that's the way I see it.
A lot on the line. A lot for
It's
going to be great. It's going to be great. And I'm glad, what I thought of too, is I'm glad we did this today because I'm like at an all-time excitement about the game, like about the matchup. Cause I don't know if you feel the same way, but every year by the time we wait the 2 weeks and by the time we get to Super Bowl Sunday, I'm just kind of tired of hearing about the Chiefs and the 49ers. Like, I just want to play the game already. Like we've almost talked it to death, but here we are, like day one, we've got the matchup, like still kind of peeking from the games yesterday. Like the games were, they were so great. Like we haven't talked much about the Ravens, but and we don't have to get too far into it, but that game was close a lot later than I think people are going to remember. Like the Ravens getting the fumble on the goal line, like crazy play that is probably going to be overshadowed by the other game because of how close it was or what eventually happens in the Super Bowl. But boy, was that a great playoff game also. It was just all around great football. I think the right two teams are in it. Obviously they earned it, but yeah, I think it's going to live up to the hype. It's going to live up to the hype for sure.
Well, let me ask about the games yesterday, but more in a roundabout way. Which team do you like getting back to that same spot this next year, or even better next year? The Lions or the Ravens? Which team do you think is able to get back to championship game or even Super Bowl next year?
That's a tough one. I mean, I think they both have a good shot. I think I would lean toward the Ravens getting back because I think they have a little bit more of like an X's and O's system in place that may be more repeatable. We also don't know what's going to happen with all those coordinators too. Like we saw what can happen in Philly when you lose both your coordinators, sometimes stuff that you've kind of forgotten about, rears its head, or like you get stuck doing the wrong thing and things just like take a nosedive, if you don't have the right leadership involved. So, the other important thing I think is, coming back from the disappointment, which it's tough to see the Lions, like the Lions are just devastated. Like this is the highest they've been in a long time. And like Dan Campbell seemed so, just grief stricken after the game basically. But I think I'll lean toward the Ravens. I think they're both playoff teams next year. Absolutely. But a lot of question marks with what they're going to do with the coaching staffs. Ben Johnson, people love Ben Johnson for a head coaching job from the Lions, the OC. So there could easily be some transition next year, but I think I like the Ravens getting back to the championship game next year.
Yeah, to answer my own question, I totally agree with you. I think it'd be the Ravens just because I don't think they have. Mike McDonald might be leaving to go to the Seahawks. It's been the biggest name rumor there for the Ravens. But then you also have Ben Johnson being the biggest rumored head coach to go to Washington. So both teams losing possibly a coordinator and having a tough time getting back to that same spot. But with that being said, I kind of look at those divisions. Right, like the Browns, who knows who's going to play quarterback week 1 next year? It'll probably be Deshaun if he's healthy. And then you've got Burrow, and Burrow will be incredible, and he'll have a tough, be tough. But then Vikings, are they going to have Kirk Cousins back? They don't have to. They don't want to. They don't have to re-sign him. And then you got to talk about the NFC side of it. Yeah, that's kind of, Packers probably still pretty
that
darn
might
good.
be,
they're just kind of.
That might be a good consideration. Yeah. Like the NFC would be an easier path probably for the Lions than the AFC with the Ravens. So who knows?
Yeah, just kind of tough to tell, but for right now, it's definitely that.
Good thought experiment. Yeah. For some off-season football. Yeah.
Yeah. What about Super Bowl MVP wise here? Are we just, I mean, Mahomes or bust?
I think I think you just close your eyes and throw a dart that says Mahomes Super Bowl MVP. I think like you just don't overthink it. Like, I think so. Yeah. It could easily be Kelsey, if he continues to target him as much as he has, which he definitely should, like Kelsey could easily end up being a huge storyline from the Super Bowl, obviously with the, the dating life and everything. There's going to be a lot of camera shots of her in front of about, 400 million people or however, whoever watches the Super Bowl. But Kelsey's a contender, but I'd go Mahomes.
Yeah, I think that's the same here. All right, well, the other thing I got to talk to you about and ask you is kind of the coaching stuff here as we end out the podcast. Coaching kind of news and notes, and love to have you back on here for the draft here when we get closer to that too and some offseason stuff, but we'll leave that for later on. So right now, Bill Belichick, not currently an NFL head coach. Do you see Belichick being an NFL coach again? I mean, he's 72 is kind of the deal here. He's age-wise. Does he take a year off and go back, or is this kind of it?
I think it's now or never. And I think we're running out of jobs because it seemed like the strongest contender was the Falcons, which they've since hired Raheem Morris, who's seemed like he was destined for a head coaching job, especially with how successful DeMeco Ryans has been. Like he's cut from the same cloth as DeMeco Ryans for sure, like a defensive coordinator guy. So that was a huge hire, but that was also Belichick's probably best chance to have a head coaching job. So I kind of see him retiring. Like Pete Carroll's another tough one. Like Pete Carroll could easily retire. Pete Carroll seems younger than Bill Belichick most of the time, but I think Belichick, like I would love to have seen him with the Chargers, to be honest. I think that would have been a really interesting fit. Like we'll get to the Chargers, I'm sure in a second, but I think Belichick could easily hang it up here. Like from his point of view, like you'd hate to end this way, as like a bottom 3 team in the league and like just kind of sputter out like that, especially when Brady went out on top, so it'd be I guess not quite on top, he petered out a little bit, but like he still made the playoffs, lost a game or whatever at the end. But, people wouldn't see it the same way. And I think Bill Belichick, he may not crave the victory lap Super Bowl the way Brady did. I don't know that Belichick, obviously he's going to try to win a Super Bowl everywhere he goes, but like, I don't think most of the Super Bowl contenders are interested in hiring Bill Belichick right now. So I could easily see him retire, which would stink, but obviously he's a staple of the game. He's the best of all time.
Yeah. And then, I also want to ask you here, basically, what's been your favorite head coaching hire for kind of position fit with the current guys they got here? Because we had 8 NFL head coaching openings, and now we're down to 2 with, presumably a couple of guys here that I just mentioned earlier, Ben Johnson in Washington and Mike McDonald, not McDonald, but McDonald, Ravens DC going to Seattle. So with all that being said, who do you like here from the best hire? Who do you think has the best hire?
I think it has to be the Chargers. Like I was incredibly surprised in the best way, that they got Jim Harbaugh. Like I had forgotten that that's where he played for so long. So like that was on me because that was just before my time, but good for them. I mean, what a hire. What a hire. I mean, he's a slam dunk in my opinion. I love the guy. I think he's hilarious. I think he's as quintessentially football guy as you can get, like great quarterback. Like he loves Herbert already. Like nobody's got any doubts about Jim Harbaugh. Like he's at his absolute peak. He just won a natty, with Michigan and has been to a Super Bowl before. Like he didn't happen to win it, but like making the Super Bowl, it's like getting nominated for an Oscar. You're just happy to be nominated. Like if we win it, great, and I'm sure the coaches don't feel that way, but that, but to us on the outside, it's like he made it to a Super Bowl. The Chargers couldn't have done any better. Like this is better than them hiring Belichick. Like maybe that, if that was like the slam dunk out there before, Harbaugh's the man. Like, he's the absolute man. He's going to do a great job there.
What about Mike Vrabel though? Because I gotta be honest, if it's up to Vrabel and Belichick, excuse me, not Vrabel and Belichick, if it's up to Vrabel and Harbaugh, who they did hire, I was going, man, I just go get Mike Vrabel, because you know what? Chargers ownership, not the easiest work within the entire world. And that's why Harbaugh left the Niners situation, just because he was still winning games. I think they were 500 that last year. I don't think they were like killing it, but 4 years, you do all great. And I'm not saying here Vrabel's just a peach to work with either, but it just seems
no idea.
Yeah, there's just so much behind the scenes. The stuff that's public though is that Harbaugh's not the easiest guy to work with ownership, and Vrabel there's no comment on right now. Besides maybe the Titans are a little bit more bossy in their ownership. So, would you have rather Vrabel been the head coach, or did you just think, hey, you know what, this is the best situation by far for the Chargers getting Harbaugh?
No, I would absolutely rather have Harbaugh.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they would take any friction that came with that. Like, plus, the Spanos family, interesting cats to work with. Let's say, like they could, even among the weird sort of fraternity of NFL owners, like the Spanoses are a little bit of a loose cannon sometimes, and Jim Harbaugh is equally unpredictable. So like it's in a weird way, it's like a match made in heaven. I think he's just going to go down there and they're going to play great football. Like, NFL is tough to change a culture overnight. Like, in a way, in college, you bring in a new coach, it's like a new administration. It's like a new regime, which does happen in the NFL, but also those are companies. Like, those are well-oiled machines in a lot of cases, and there's a business behind them. And I feel like he can do it. He's going to come back and do it. And I mean, Vrabel, I love Vrabel. I personally think Seattle should hire Vrabel. Like, I think he's a great fit there. Like, they want to get back to being a defensive team. Like, I think Vrabel would be a great fit in Seattle. We'll see. Like, I have no idea like how it'll all shake out. And now that the Lions and Ravens are out, like, those guys can start interviewing and stuff. So a lot of moving pieces, man. But if I was the Chargers, I could not be happier.
Yeah. Harbaugh leaving Michigan when he left Michigan is to me the oddest thing, because you go out on top to
100%.
the NFL, and you're not going straight to a team in the NFL that's got an easy path or has had a history of a bunch of success. You are going to a team that has a great quarterback, but it's kind of great quarterback and then a bunch of cap issues that whoever they hire as GM for the Chargers, because that's yet to be done, we'll have to figure out.
That's maybe a bigger question. Yeah.
So,
absolutely true.
All right. Well, and then round it out here on the podcast, I do want to ask. So maybe it's too early to get into draft stuff, but I'll just ask you one draft question on the quarterback position. Top 3 quarterbacks. Who do you think goes in order? And is it the same that you have personally ranked as well? Or is this just too big of a question at this point? Because you've got that Drake May spot there and Jay McDaniels, and I don't know what I'd do.
Yeah, I don't either. It's so early. I'm going to watch all these guys. I'm going to watch all of these guys' games. I'm going to watch all 12, 13, 14, whatever games, how many games each of these guys played. I'm going to watch them. By draft time, I will have a really good answer for you on that. However, at first glance, I am like my Caleb Williams stock has never been lower. Okay. And I think maybe I should just leave it at that. Right now, Caleb Williams, he may end up being the number 1 pick. I think still the odds on favorite to be the number 1 pick, but he certainly did not help himself this season. Like, I saw some good throws from him. I also saw some great new athletes that he had to work with. And I saw him kind of act poorly on the sidelines or like after games. Like, he showed up in every commercial, so he kind of started to annoy me a little bit. But he, I could see one of these other guys, Jaden Daniels or Drake May, making some big moves for sure. I don't think this is a Trevor Lawrence or Andrew Luck situation where it's like just point and throw. He's the number 1 guy. I think there might be some movement on that.
Because I think last year, before when he won the Heisman, I think it was, hey, we're Caleb number one, no matter what. And it was like almost Caleb no matter what, if he could come out right now. Yeah, it'd be number one quarterback drafted.
Yeah,
right?
I think they said that 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think you're right.
After he played at Oklahoma. Like, I don't think he was even eligible, and people were like, he'd be the number one quarterback today. But like, they love saying that. They love saying that a year in advance. I think they said that about Sam Howell a year in advance. Oh, if he came out right now, he'd be the number one guy. And then it's like, okay, we'll see in the third round a year from now. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well,
but enough about the draft.
No, too much into it already. All right. Well, I guess final and then very, very last question here at the podcast is you've got the Chiefs winning it. You've got Mahomes as MVP. Do you want to pick a Pro Bowl MVP?
A Pro Bowl MVP. Are they doing that? Because
they're
it's
doing
not a football game anymore.
Yeah, they're doing the flag football game. No,
gosh.
but all seriousness.
Oh, they are doing a game. It's a flag football game. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no pick. No pick.
No. But all seriousness here. Which team that didn't make the playoffs from this past season do you see being the best? Just overall coming in this next season, which team are you like, hey, you know what? Didn't make the playoffs this year, but I've got the highest hopes for next year. Just matter. Listen, I know we haven't hit free agency. I know we haven't hit cap stuff. I know we haven't hit draft stuff, but still, it's kind of the final question here in the pod.
You think? Are you thinking like basically like the Lions of last year?
Yeah, which
like the
I
team
feel like it's
almost made the playoffs.
I feel like right now there's going to be just so many people who are going, man, you know what? And this kind of goes beside the point because the Texans actually won a playoff game, but like, oh, you know what? Next year it's going to be the Texans are going to be incredible in year 2. CJ Stroud with actually wide receivers, right? I'm kind of going in that front here of something with oh, you know what? Oh gosh, dude. Now the Jets have a healthy Aaron Rodgers and they drafted offensive line. Like kind of like that deal here. What's in your mind? What are you thinking? Who's gonna really rebound?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I think in the AFC, you'd probably have to go with the Jags. Like they had such a collapse this year, like Eagles level collapse almost. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like not 10-1 and they fell all the way out, where the Eagles didn't quite fall all the way out, but they did completely give away that division lead. Like they were like 99% to win the division, and they couldn't close it out, and they completely collapsed at the end of the year. Will that happen again? You got to think no. So like, I think the Jaguars are still super talented and super well coached. Although, that record in the second, the last part of the year, essentially, like, that doesn't bode well for my argument, but I do think the Jags have what it takes to get to the playoffs next year. In the NFC, I kind of like the Saints in some way. Like they would have been an absolute lame duck of a playoff team. Like they would have got beat by pretty much anyone. Like the Saints, they were close this year, but like they weren't going to do anything this year. If they can figure out Derek Carr at quarterback, like the Saints have some good things. Like, and Chris Olave made some great plays. Like Cam Jordan is still, he's still the same guy. Like I think the Saints, I think are still in a playoff window. You know what I mean? I don't know if the Saints can win a Super Bowl, but I kind of think the Saints are, if there's one winner in the clubhouse in that division, I still kind of think the Saints are on equal footing with the Bucks.
Yeah.
As far as moving forward.
I mean, they were right there at the end of it too, even with the season they had. So I totally agree. If I'm picking two,
and Joe Burrow's not going to get injured next year for the whole year, knock on wood. So like the Bengals will have a different year for sure. Although they won games with Jake Browning. I mean, you can't be mad.
Yeah, can't be too mad. But Jamar Chase was injured down the stretch a little bit here and there too. So they did really good considering. But yeah, if I'm picking two, I mean, the Bengals finished with a winning record. And I think with Joe Burrow, they definitely exceed that. They finished 9-8. So AFC, you just said it. Bengals for sure. NFC for me, it's kind of tough, but I think the Cardinals, Arizona Cardinals are going to be a lot better this next year.
Interesting.
I think having Kyler Murray basically be injured, come back mid-season, and then seeing all of the staff really rally around him and play really well, I think the Cardinals could just make the playoffs. I'm not going to say they do much more than that, but all of a sudden, heck, you put I've seen some drafts here, some mock drafts, some Marvin Harrison Jr., some other guys around on that Cardinals team. I think they could shoot up
for sure.
Yeah, and flip the script real quick here. All right, well, Patrick,
agreed.
Thanks so much for joining here on the latest episode of the CGA Tour podcast. As always, great having you on.
Crisp hour. This was perfect. Right on the note. 60 minutes there. So, thanks for having me. It's a shame we only get one more football game besides the flag football Pro Bowl, but happy to be back. We'll see you for the draft.
Sounds great. Can't wait. And as always, go Pokes. Just kidding. You could say go Longhorns or something.
Hook 'em horns, hook 'em horns, hook 'em horns. I thought you were going to fade me out. I'll get a hook 'em horns in there.
You're Kyle Shanahan fellow alumni.
That's right.